Hello everybody and welcome to this webinar titled If I Only Knew Then What I Know Now. My name is Daniel Horowitz and I am the genealogy expert at MyHeritage. Besides contacting genealogy societies, bloggers, and media, I also do lectures either face-to-face, in conferences, or webinars like this around the world. I started to be interested in genealogy in 1986, and during that time I had the opportunity to be the teacher and study guide editor of the Family History Project, searching for my roots in Venezuela for 15 years. Now I am involved in digitization and transcription projects, and I volunteer my time to the Israel Genealogy Research Association. One of the first things that I realized while arranging all my genealogy, while going over whatever I had, is the importance of naming. And I'm pretty sure you all think that I'm talking about the names on the family tree, but no, I'm actually talking about the names that you give to your files or to your documents in your computer. And I don't know how many of you know this, but it is a fact. And what you're looking over there is actually, or could be actually, the name of a file, a doc file in your computer. You don't need to count. I do that for you. You have 159 characters plus 38 spaces. And at least Windows will allow you to have such a name on the file without a problem. In fact, a file or a folder is limited to 255 characters. So there is plenty of space and ways to name a file on a folder the most exact and complete as you want. And this will be definitely helping you to identify what do you have in that file. So be sure to name those files in a meaningful way. Now, there is, besides that, the path or the length in the direction for that file. In this case, I am showing you the path of a file in my computer, which goes from the computer to documents, to box, to a family genealogy, to Horowitz, to documents, to Piskel, military academy, and so on. So there is no problem with naming files and folders as precise and as exact as you need. Not only that, but by naming or structuring your files and folders in your computer in a proper way, it will be much easier for you to understand what is inside of them. Personally, I have a general folder for all my genealogy, and inside I have a folders for each of my documents and my families over there. So I have a folder for my Horowitz, I have a folder for my Pollacks, I have a folder for my Singers. Inside, I have at least three folders, which is documents, cemeteries, and photos. And inside those, I have subfolders with other information classified that I'm going to show you now. Try to think of a regular way of sorting and archiving real folders in, paper folders, and that is the way that you should, or at least works for me, to keep it on the computer. Now, as I said, not only the folders, but also my files have a structure. I normally use as the first words for the type of file. If this is a tombstone, a birth certificate, a death certificate, then I have the last name, and I will recommend you to do capitals, but this is a little bit of do as I say, don't do as I do. I really don't do it with capitals, but in the genealogy community, this is what it's more accepted, just so everybody will understand what is the last name and what is the first name. Then the first names, and then the dates, and then probably a place or a more descriptive name. In this way, you can see that I will have all the tombstones together. I will have all the death registers together. I will have all of tombstones from my Horowitz family together, and all the tombstones for Horowitz Joseph together when I sort them by name. Now, yes, we need to look into my family tree and try to create those folders. The big problem is, and this is probably a little bit breaking that rule, that my two main last names is Horowitz and Chobotaro, which is a Romanian name. But inside my Horowitz, I also have singers. In my Ciobotaro, I also have Polacks. And if I keep going back, inside my Horowitz, I have Menchels, and inside my Zingers, I have Singers. That's a long story. In my Ciobotaro, I have Cohens, I have Harabagius. In my Polacks, I have Erbs and Ziegelbachs. And I can keep going back more and more into deep and farther away on my family tree. So what I have decided, and I would leave this totally up to you, but it will depend on the amount of information that you have for each branch. I actually have a folder for my Horowitz Menchel. I have a folder for my Singer, Breyer, Goldman, and Weininger, because Singers, as you can see, there was a little bit of intermarriage over there, so it was very difficult for me to split it into folders. My Chobotaro, Cohen, and Harabagyu is one folder, and my Polak, Erbst, and Siegelbachs is another folder. Taking in account that most of the information that I have for my woman in those lines is very small, so they can all live together only in 6 or 7 folders. Now, what about the names of the people and the titles? Well, I may have people, you may have people like this, and this is just one person. Well, you have a prefix or a title: doctor, Mr., sir, engineer. Then you have a first name, and then you have a middle name, and then you have a last name. And sometimes it will include the last name of the father and the mother, especially if you're coming from Spain or South America, like is my case. So my official name will have both the last name of my father and my mother. And then you have probably also an also known as, or another names that people call that person, a religious name. Somebody will appear over there, a legal name if somebody changed their name, and a suffix in some of cases: first, second, junior, senior, etc. All those things you need to take in account when you name people, because it will not be the same Dr. Benjamin Zvi Hersch Shor Singer Jr. than Engineer Benjamin or Benny Hersch Shor Singer Sr. Oh, the title, I'm sorry. Yeah. Next, let's go into a totally different subject. And here I'm talking about documents and pictures that normally you don't have. Those that you discover, or somebody actually discovered for you, when you visit them, or when you gather together, or when somebody say, hey, somebody died and we're cleaning the apartment, and we found all these documents and all this paperwork. Don't worry, I will send it to you. Oh no, those are the worst words you can ever hear. Because people, believe me, they have good intentions, but they not always will come to their promises. So I have learned the hard way, unfortunately, this title that if you see it, you get it. And sometimes I even had to go to the place against people who are saying, no, no, no worries. You don't need to come. I will get it to you. No, no, thank you. I will get into my car and I will drive and I will get to you there to get it. Now, once you see it, you should get it digitalized because paperwork tend to be destroyed or ruined or damaged for multiple reasons. So try to digitize everything that you can. Today, we have some scanners and multi-feeder uh, devices that will be helping you to do that. You can build also a very easy home style one with a camera and just a tripod and use this to scan. And I have used this sometimes. But even if not, even if it's just with your smartphone and using what I call the spy technique, make sure that you digitize and take photos of every photo and document you ever see, because it may be a bad quality photo, but it may be also the only best picture that you will have from that photo or document. So how do I organize images? And yes, believe me, same as you, probably, hope not. I just thrown all the photos and all the things into one folder. Definitely that was the wrong way to do it because you have a lot of things here. And I have learned that you should be creating different folders for different types of uh, sources or images. I like to have one folder for each cemetery, and it doesn't matter if I have one tombstone or 20 tombstones in that cemetery. I have one folder for documents, another folder for photos, another folder for videos, folders for things that I have found in a specific place, like the city hall or an archive, audio interviews, as you can see, or specific books that I have scanned. I try to keep things organized in folders, and inside each folder, whatever image is referred to that subject. Now, taking in account, of course, that sometimes you will have, no matter how you do it and what you do it, some images that they will not belong to any folder, so you will need to have them just floating around as much organized as you can. What type of images do I use? Well, depends on the function that I want on the images. Normally, if I want to see a thumbnail of the file on my folder, as you are seeing also in my screen, I use JPEGs, that they could be the extension JPG or JEPG. And the advantage is that with a double click, you can open it very easy, see it in your browser, but also when they are closed, you can see more or less, and if you know your records and your images, definitely you will know what they are. The only problem with JPEGs is the compression. In order to have it smaller and more portable, the JPEG format takes out of your quality. So if you want to print later on that document again, probably you will want to start by scanning it into a format that will not take out the compression, that will save it exactly with the colors and as the image is. And for that, I will suggest you to use TIFF, T-I-F-F. That format doesn't have any compression at all. BMP and PNG are another way of saving images. I don't have anything really to say about them. I don't really use them that much. They are less common to be automatically tried or worked by computers. But then we have a PDF. And the great advantage of a PDF is that you can save multi-pages documents in one document or one file. But that comes with a price, as you can see in the image. The PDF, most of the times, and Windows sometimes fix that, but it's not always for sure, you will not be able to see the content, not even from the first page. So you will only see the icon of the PDF, and that is kind of a problem. Now, remember I said about printing. Well, printing, first of all, JPEGs and PDF are the most common ones, and if they work for Mac and Windows. And if you want to just store the image in your computer, I will suggest you to scan it at a resolution of 300 dpi, dots per inch. It's kind of a middle size, and you can still print it quite fairly and have it on the monitor of your computer with good resolution to blow it up and be able to read what it says over there. If you are looking for someday printing or reprinting that document with the highest possible accuracy, I will suggest you TIFF, which has no compression, and at least 600 or 1000 dpi. The only problem is that the more dots per inch that you get on a file, the bigger the file, then the heavier the file becomes. Now, what about dates? Oh, I learned about hard dates the most hard way possible. I had to redate all my files because, at the beginning, I just start with the 05/07/1980. It looks very straightforward, right? Well, not necessarily, because first of all, when I see all those dates in this format, for what for you may be the May 7 of 1980, for me is actually 5th of July 1980. So yes, those two first parts, as long as you don't have a number above 12, they're almost impossible to know if they are following the US or the rest of the world or other places in the world format. So day versus month, that is a problem. Not good. So what if we write the months in letters, right? That will solve that problem. Yeah, but not quite. Because when I sort files, yes, all the 05s are going to be together, but then the next character, it's a letter. And the sort of the letter, unfortunately, doesn't fit the sort of the year, because the year starts in January and then February, and June and July are in the middle. So this format is also no good. What if we put the month on the front and then we write January, July, September? Well, no, that also will not work. We still have the same problem of the sorting with the months, so it's a no-go. Well, let's keep changing things. What if we have the year in the front and then I have it already sorted by years? So I have all the 1985 at the beginning and then following the 86. Well, that more or less solved the problem, but still the middle part of the date is the month in letters. So not to go back to the numbers, and the sort doesn't help me to have it order in a timeline fashion. So The only option will be actually to go back to the numbers on the month, but now I'm going to use only numbers. So 1982, 0105. This is actually the only way that the sorting will work, and it's quite understandable that after the year should come the month and then the date. And if you are following that for your own genealogy, you will not be confused by having the day and the month at the beginning. Now, what I had to do is that whenever I receive something with the date that is not formatted this way, I actually change it and I use it on my files in this way, so I know that 01 is January, 08 is August, 02 is February, and that will give me the timeline, which is also very important, and I will talk about it a little bit more in a second. Now, chasing the facts. Yes, that is definitely something you should do with each individual in the family tree. The only problem is, in my experience, that we all try to start, or we all actually start chasing the facts, starting with the death. Because when we realize that somebody in the family has passed away, is most of the times, and this is a mistake, that we want to uh, you to follow and try to find out all that what the person did. So let's start with the death and make sure that you have the death certificate, the burial certificate, the tombstone, the obituaries, because over there you're going to find the dates, the places, the family names of other relatives and members, and a lot of information that will remember and that will help you reconstructing the life of your family members. Then you need to go to government records, because everybody that lived had to generate some footprints left on the government, no matter where. So with this in mind, I went to my family tree many years ago, and I realized that I need to see dead people, if you remember the movie. And I started by looking into the birth dates, because if I see in my tree that I have somebody born in 1917, well, chances are that person, if it's not dead, at least is very close to be dead. Okay, we're talking today actually more than 100 years. So chances is that the person is dead. Now, I use this 100-year rule, and I may be mistaken or missing one or two people that are living till 100 years. Most of the times, those people are already dead. Now, based on that, I can kill, well, don't get me wrong, at least mark them as deceased people in the same generation and any generation above them. Okay, if the person the birth of date is calculated less than 100 years, I prefer to investigate and try to get the right details. Now, dates keep being a problem, especially for me, at least, with Jewish origins and ancestors, because there is a difference between the Hebrew date and the Gregorian date. And you will need to excuse me just for a couple of seconds if this is not related to your particular family, because in the Jewish culture, the dates, the calendars is totally different. The names are named different. not mentioning that it could be written in Hebrew, and then when it's written in Hebrew, there is no numbers but letters for the day, and the year is totally off. In Hebrew calendar, we're in the 5,700 or 700 and something today. So yeah, some of those dates will be very easy to convert just using Google. Okay, I put whatever date I get in Google and the words in Gregorian, and Google will give me the exact date that Hebrew date was in the Gregorian calendar, more or less, because for the Hebrew dates or for the Jewish people, uh, the date starts on the sunset of the Gregorian day before. So saying that the 21 of Heshvan is the 2nd of November, probably they are referring of the day of the 2nd of November, but actually the day 21 of Heshvan started the 1st of November around 6 or 7 o'clock at night. And that is also important. Now, sometimes you will be able to convert all the dates wherever you have all the information. Other times will be actually impossible because only the month or the day of the month will not be sufficient to give you the Gregorian date. So if they are really dead, you have way more information to find about these people, number one. Secondly, the information actually is going to be more easy to get because privacy laws probably are already out and the information will be more public. Let's take this person, for example, who died in 1982. And remember that we were talking about the timeline. I want to go back from the death to the birth and try to follow all the steps that the person did in its life. So I would like to reconstruct their life into the timeline. As you can see, when I started this, well, I had very few pieces of information. I had a birth, I have an immigration, birth of daughters, which technically means between or before that she had to be married, and then suddenly the death. So you see how I jump from 1910 to 1933, 34, and then jump from the 40s to the 82. Definitely I am missing a lot of information. So I use, again, starting with the death, and this is a search that I did on the MyHeritage search engine. And the reason why I am using this is because MyHeritage will offer me a transliteration or a translation technology. You see how I am searching in English, but my family, Jewish, and most of them living in Israel, they write their names in their tombstones in Hebrew. And it will be very difficult, possible, but difficult to find it in Billion Graves, which is the database that I'm searching here. Uh, if I don't know the exact spelling. So by using MyHeritage, I was able to find the information with the tombstone of my person. And then from here, I can just go to the Billion Grave and look for the tombstone of the person. Okay, so I actually found it. Okay, you have it here. This is the person you see in the upper part of the stone. It's written in Hebrew. On the lower part of the stone, they were good enough to write the name of the lady in Latin characters, right? Good. So I have more information, and I actually have even more information because I love cemeteries, because our ancestors, your relatives, are there waiting for you to come and visit and get the information. You don't need to make appointments, you don't need to phones, you don't need to do anything. And once you find one, Guess what? You can find many others. You just need to look around. You see that tombstone right next to this lady? Well, guess what? Like in most of the cases, the couples married are buried one next to the other. And in other many cases, other family members will be buried over there. And billion graves, because it is based on a GPS coordinates, and they know exactly which and where are each of the tombstones. You see how down there it tells me nearby graves. So all what I need is to read and to see who is buried nearby, and immediately I will find the tombstone of the husband with more information. Now, I don't believe anybody. I don't believe anything. I don't even believe my own eyes, because sometimes the information is really funny. This is a record which I thought was about my great grandfather. Why? Well, his name is Chaim Singer. How come he is not my guy, right? And he is buried actually in the city of Chernovitz or Chernivtsi in Ukraine, which is the city that I am looking for. And more than that, the father name is Ovadia, which matches my family. This is definitely my guy. Well, not necessarily. You see here, everything seems to match. As I said, Chaim Singer in my family, Ovadia Singer, you see the Chernovitz over there. The only problem is that the death date doesn't match at all. My guy died in 1927. Okay, he was born in 1855, and I have the marriage certificate, which is what I'm showing you there, where you see his birth year, 1855 for him and 1859 for the spouse. They were married in 1898, so it's impossible that he was dead in 1878. Well, you really need to take good care of your information. I realize that not only that, but although he was married in 89, most of the kids actually were born before the marriage. What a scandal. Well, not really. And first of all, it's not a scandal, but the marriage was not registered until after a couple of kids, especially males, were born, because that was the way for the kids to have their maiden name from the mother, and then avoid the military, because the first kid of the couple will not be conscript into the military. So the first one had the last name of the mother, the second one will have the last name of the father. Not to mention that, at least again, on Jewish people in Europe, Eastern Europe in that time, they couldn't care less to register their activities with the government. Now, I will not bother you with the fact that the date also doesn't match between the Hebrew and the Gregorian one, but I actually found the tombstone. And according to the tombstone, he died on the April 20, 1928. You can see it right here down, written in German, 20.4.1928, and he was 76 years old. That is also, by the way, what it says in the Hebrew, that he was 76 years. But I also have his death certificate, and the death certificate actually confirm that the date is the exact date. So the first record was not my guy, even that almost everything seemed correct. Now, did I discard that first record? No, because all those names repeating themselves across my family learn or teach me that that other person may be an ancestor of this one. And I only need to keep doing my research and to find out how they are all connected one with the other. And for that, I need sources and repositories. And oh, how naive I was when I started to collect all the information and writing it down in my family tree without sources and repositories. What are sources, repositories, and citations? Well, the source is where I read or heard about that fact, like the document. A death certificate is going to be a source. A person is going to be a source. The repository, yeah, I know it says where, but it's more like the physical place. It's an archive. It's a cemetery. Okay. The goal is to be able, through citations, sources, and repositories, to go back exactly to the original information and keep track of what you have researched. If your source will be the 1940 US Census and the repository is the National Archive, you don't need to go there again to look for the census unless you are looking for that piece, to see again that piece of information. Try to look for other censuses in other places, and that will save you time. As you can see, and this is why I like so much my heritage, not only by because I work there, but because it will give me all the options for every fact. In this case, I'm taking the birth. You see how I can put the date, and here I have an advantage because there are fields for each part of the date. So I'm not concerned of using the month, the date, and the year. I have a place, I have a description, I can add a note, I can add the source citation, and I can add many sources for this fact, and I can add the citation as long as I want, and I can put a URL because sometimes the source or the repository it's available online, and I can track which day was when I added this, and I can also, very important, add a photo of whatever document or whatever piece of information I'm referring to. So I have over there all the information that I need. So the goal is to be able to come from this, which was my original timeline, into this. So now you're not only seeing more information, but you're also seeing the source citations and the images and the documents and everything that backed up whatever I have researched and whatever I have found for this individual and for every individual in my family tree. Now, another key to be successful, at least for me, is to do associations. And you can do associations between photos, documents, and images, and associate that not only with the people, but also with the facts and the sources and the repositories. What I am trying to say? Well, one document can refer to a person, to a fact for a person, to a source. Obviously, you found it by a source in a repository. And the same is correct for photos. You have a photo of a person that shows you a fact, a source, and a repository, or any image, if that image is from a document or actually it's more than images because it could be audio today, it could be video. These are the associations, and every piece can be associated to multiple elements from the right part. But also the right part, it's based on associations. Individuals are associated to facts, And facts are associated to sources, and the people appear in different sources and in different repositories. So everything is interconnected one with the other. And the moment that you start understanding this and applying this, you will actually build a web with all your family. And this brings me back to my file structure, because that web and that interrelated information, it's going to affect the way you structure your files. You already know that I have folders for each of my family, and inside each folder I have cemeteries and archives and all kind of folders. But I also have a folder by cemetery, for example, because in one cemetery I have found tombstones for different branches of my family. So what do? I take two techniques that helps me here. First, using special characters like the @ okay, will prioritize the name in the sort. If I name a folder @ cemetery, that when I sort that in the computer, that folder is going to appear at the first. And I could have @ cemeteries, @ documents, @ pictures, etc. The other thing is shortcuts. And this will allow me to create those connections. So instead of duplicating the cemetery X on my Horowitz family into this cemetery X or cemetery Y folder, I create a shortcut. And whenever I double click on that shortcut, it actually drives me to the original place where this folder is. So the folder appears only in one place, but I can get to it from different and many other folders thanks to those shortcuts. Okay, now it's time to analyze documents and photos. And when you have a document, you need to try to find all the names, not only from the person, but also from other relatives. Most of the times you will find parents, not only fathers, but parents' names, ID numbers that will be useful to find more information, the status, the gender, the birth and death date, and places. Now, the surname, you need to be careful, especially talking about females, because they could be the married name or the maiden name, depending on the status and depending on the document. Normally, I will keep the ladies together with their paternal family until they married. Meaning that yes, some of the documents I will have them splitted before the marriage and after the marriage in different folders. But because I have, again, one big folder for my Horowitz, yes, most of the documentation for my mother, for example, will be in that document and that folder after the marriage. Before the marriage, I would look for her into the Chobotaros folder. So what I started to do is analyzing, just as you're seeing here, what records, what documents, and what images I had for each of my relative. And I started with the very basics: birth, marriage, and death. And tombstones are as good as a death certificate. And then I went even further, and I was looking for education, military, occupation, immigration, any other facts that I knew about the person, and trying to see one by one in my individuals and my branches that I had all the facts for all my people. And then, yes, the documents, as I said before, will be analyzed and attached or related to the different facts that they reflect. And one document will have multiple facts. You will have birth, marriage, death, and other informations there. And that will allow you to review the timeline and make sure to fill in the holes and to make sure that you have documents for each of the events that you have there. Now, a little bit about photos, and I am going to try to go over this very fast. So what do you do when you see a family photo like this? Well, you turn it and pray. You pray that somebody actually wrote in the back the name of the people, the date, and the place. The second thing that you do is you digitized and you shared with anybody or everybody in the family. Now, the photos will give you more information if you look very closely. In this case, also very important, this photo actually gave me a clue about a location. First, the obvious. This is M. Singer Fancy Groceries. So you know that they're selling tea, coffee, butter, and eggs. At least that is what the window says. M. Singers is obviously the owner. The only problem is that the name of the woman in the door of the store started with an M, same as the name of the husband. So not a lot of help over there. And then I assume it was located in New York because most of my Singer family were living and working in New York. But you know already what is the key for knowing where is this location? The 722 repeated on the top of the sign. That has to be the number of the location. So what did I look for? First of all, I use this map. This is the pedigree map of my heritage to look for all my family living in New York. And guess what? All of them lived in Brooklyn. So I know exactly what are the addresses of my people. Then I went to Google Maps with those same address, and I started with each of those addresses located in Google, and I start writing 722. The best thing that Google Maps may give you is the suggestion of a close by address that has or starts with that number or that part of the address that you have. And that is how I managed to pinpoint that 722 was actually in Fifth Avenue in Brooklyn. Now that makes pretty much sense because again, it's just a 15-minute bus ride from the place where my family was living. So it makes sense to be working and to having that store close by home. More than that, and what I thought was very funny, is that I could see that location today. And as you can see, it resembles very much the image that I had. It's still a grocery, not Jewish anymore. Now it's a Mexican grocery. And another cool feature from Google is that I could actually go back in time if they have multiple images for that place, and I can see how the location was looked a few years ago at least. So the 7022 of Fifth Avenue in Brooklyn, it's still a grocery store. So locations are extremely important. The way I treat addresses and location is the old style when you if you remember, used to write a letter, put it into an envelope, and send it by mail. Well, today we call it snail mail. But starts with the name of the person or the family, and then but it starts with the number, and then whatever street and city and county and state and zip code and country you are talking about. Even if I am talking about cemeteries and location in cemeteries, I follow the same rule. As you can see, I have area, row, plot, street, city, country, etc. Now, just for you to know a little bit more about the pedigree map, it will take all your locations from the MyHeritage family tree, and it will allow you to see all the events and all the families that were happening in one place. And this is how I actually realize, as you can see, that my mother many years, like 50 years before she met and married my father, actually was in the same place, in the same refugee camp with my great grandparents from my paternal side. So this is the connections that I mentioned you, that the relationships that you can do through all the information in your family tree. Now you need to compare and analyze the different places. If the place for the birth and death are different, it means that the person moved in the middle. So you need to find out what happened in the middle. If the birth, the marriage, and the death are not equal, then it means that there is an immigration path here. And even the death versus the burial. Some people die in some place, some people are buried in a different place. Why is that? What happened over there? Another problem I found out is languages, and I do manage a few, not all of them, but I found the way of dealing with all the languages that you can think about. The first is a record that I actually received in image, okay, in digital, not in paper. And of course, I can always ask somebody to read it and help me with that language. The only problem is that I work in my genealogy close to midnight, and people, for some reason, they don't like to collaborate at that time of the day. So I found out that, especially if we're talking about printed letters, I can use a software that does OCR, optical character recognition, and that will put in Word all those words that are in an image. Sometimes, of course, not everything will be perfectly transcribed, but you see here a fairly well scanned of this Ukrainian record. Then I just go to my dear friend Google Translate. I copy whatever the OCR gave me. I put it in Google Translate, and I have again a very fair translation, or at least the beginning of a translation, and I will need more specific things. I will be able to send this to somebody and they will help me, but at least I will immediately understand what does it said there. The last thing is, and I haven't developed this very much, but remember, you have a wonderful tool for your genealogy. It's like the Swiss Army for genealogy is actually your mobile phone. I have a full 45-minute lecture only about the use of mobile phones and technology for your genealogy. So if you think you don't do enough with your phone, you don't know how to use the technology to advance your genealogy, definitely dedicate sometimes to see what apps and what programs are available out there, and you will be surprised how you're going to improve your genealogy research just by using the correct tools. After all, you need to remember, we need that younger generation not only to teach us about the technology, but also so we can teach them and we can pass to them at the passion for genealogy, for family history, and all the information that we are actually collecting about our ancestors. I enjoyed very much sharing all what I have learned during all these years of genealogy work and research with all of you. I hope that I saved, at least for the newbies, a little bit of time, and nothing else from my side but wishing you a wonderful week. Take advantage of this extra time that we have to do a little bit more of genealogy and take very good care of yourself and your family. Goodbye, everybody. See you next time.